So like so many millions of Americans, I've been sitting here in my COVID cabin respecting stay-at-home orders for a couple weeks now, but I'm preparing to get out. It's pretty clear that we're going to start releasing and getting back to work in short time. And it's important that we all hit the ground running and that we begin to work together to create new strategies to help solve some of these desperate economic circumstances that we all are going to find ourselves in. If you don't understand just how bad the economic circumstances are, you need to pay close attention to the unemployment numbers. That's one big indicator. I think that the numbers, official numbers are 30%, but I think it's much greater than that. If you are lucky enough, fortunate enough to have a job, you have to understand that millions of Americans around you are not going to be so fortunate. And for anybody that is working, we're still facing desperate economic circumstances that's going to take a very long time for us to climb out from. What I propose here is a proven solution that's going to help all of us generate economic activity, bring money down flowing, rushing into our communities to help create jobs, to help strengthen our communities, to help strengthen our cities and municipalities. You know, and while we're focused on what's happening to us individually in our individual economies, one of the things we all need to focus on is the fact that our cities, our municipalities likewise have some very desperate economic circumstances that they're dealing with. While we have been sitting shuttered at home, our cities, our municipalities are likewise starving for income and are going to be looking for ways to generate economic activity. What I propose here is a strategy that's been put to work all across the state of Florida very successfully. This is a statewide model, but frankly, it has nationwide implication. The roots of this proposal are the last Great Recession, but quite frankly, it goes even far beyond that, back into the Great Depression. Put succinctly, here's what I'm talking about. All across the state, communities all across the state, we have vacant and abandoned lots. Many times those vacant abandoned lots are concentrated in areas that already suffer economic blight, but frankly, in some communities, they're all over the place, in the middle of our downtown corporate cores, in the middle of thriving, otherwise vibrant areas of our communities. And the concept here is very simple. As a community, we cannot just sit back and let vacant lots populate our neighborhoods and our communities anymore. These lots that I'm talking about and abandoned structures have been abandoned by their owners. And it's very simple. If they've been abandoned by their owner and that owner isn't going to take care of it, we as a community can't let it just sit there. Across the state, we have code enforcement departments that go in and mow the grass and pick up the mattresses that have been thrown there. We've got vacant structures that are a danger to the community. They're harbor for rats and crime and all kinds of other things. And so cities and municipalities have very effective code enforcement departments whose job it is to go in there and clean those things up so that these vacant lots and vacant abandoned structures don't become sources of continued blight. And that's the concept. And the concept is that no longer are we going to tolerate vacant lots. The city, municipality is going to go in there and through a fair and transparent process, get that lot up onto the public auction sites so that community can participate in bringing that lot back into a positive economic development activity and to get it back online. I'll do a screen share here that will share some of the concepts and give you some of the historical background. So there's several lots here, or several stories here to show you just how widespread this is. Curbed does a really nice series of deep dive into what happens to vacant lots, and just searching vacant lots, you can see how in communities across the country after the last economic crash, the Great Recession, they went through and looked at some of the strategies that worked. But this one right here, I really love this one because it deals with taking vacant lots and making them into gardens and things like that. But again, there's just so much information here, so many different stories from one website after the other that talks about the high cost that these vacant lots have in communities. And another one that I like, and I'll drop the links to all these articles in here, but this is another great story or link. It proposes that one of the great uses for vacant lots is to turn them into urban agriculture centers. And I think that's one of the things that is important about this concept is that, you know, when you have right now a vacant lot, It's got mattresses piled on it. Code enforcement's going and mowing the grass. They're cleaning up trash and debris on a regular basis. That costs taxpayers money. We as a community should not be in the business of mowing the grass and taking care of the vacant and abandoned property for absentee landowners. We're going to give you the opportunity to pay that off. We're going to respect your property rights. But if you choose not to pay that, then we're going to put the property up for auction so that the adjoining property owner might take that lot and make a garden out of it or expand their own home. A church may get access to that lot and use it for housing or something else within that community. It may turn into a community garden, or we can turn it into a playground. But whatever it is, the community, the leaders within that community get to decide what happens with that lot and what's the best use within that community. What I want to do now is start with a presentation that I made, which really is where this all began for me. Years ago, I started work with code enforcement departments. In 2019, I had the opportunity to present at the Florida Association of Code Enforcement Annual Conference. And quite frankly, before the crash started, I was getting ready to do my next presentation, which was focused on how a code enforcement department should go in and be part of positive community development after a crisis, after I was thinking, frankly, of a hurricane, and I was working with some of the models that code enforcement departments have used. But the concept remains the same. We have experienced a crisis. We have experienced a crisis that requires our cities to go in there and get things moving again. What this proposal or what the concept that I presented posits is that code enforcement departments, local government have the opportunity, and I frankly think the obligation, to go into these communities after a period of a crisis and revitalize properties and get these properties moving along and work with property owners, work with communities to bring properties back online. Just introduction myself, and I'll drop this in. I've been at this for a long time. I've been working on real property and frankly defending people for decades, and it's been very rewarding. But quite frankly, the most rewarding work I've ever done as an attorney is this proposal and these activities of going in and bringing back blighted properties online. Just dropped in a little bit about code enforcement. A key concept that I have here is radically reconceptualizing what we think code enforcement does and what we think code enforcement means. I frankly think that the title of these departments should change. I think code enforcement just has sort of a negative connotation about it, and that statewide what we should be doing is reconceptualizing our code enforcement departments as neighborhood affairs or neighborhood support or something that's more positive and reflects a role that code enforcement departments should be playing a far more elevated role in the community, really partnering up with the economic development departments, because code enforcement can go in there and identify the neighborhoods and the areas that are suffering from failure to thrive. And code enforcement should be partnering up with economic development and then working with economic development to start true positive economic development activities within the community. So look, I'm born and bred and raised and all the wonderful stuff here in St. Petersburg and in Florida, but I've been practicing since 1999, and then where I really saw the true positive elements of economic development, the activity, was here in the city of St. Petersburg. We had areas that had long suffered from blight, but by going in and really listening to the community and working at the community level, bringing in stakeholders, churches, and other groups, what we were able to do here in the city is to show some dramatic economic activity and positive things that happen within the community. And quite frankly, what this whole initiative that I have here asserts is that communities all across the state of Florida should be doing what we did here locally in St. Pete, which is draw in people from all across the community and stakeholders and ask them what it is that they need. And quite frankly, what our neighborhoods need is support to attack some of these vacant, abandoned buildings. This article, and I'll drop this one in from Governing Magazine, shows how by simply asserting the proposition that we're no longer going to allow blighted buildings to dot our landscape, we're no longer going to just stare at vacant lots. We went in and attacked these zombie properties, And right now, after several years of doing this, what we find are properties that had been the source of complaints for years, decades even. Now these properties, these vacant lots, have become really the ground shoots, the green shoots of new neighborhoods and thriving communities that support a healthy environment for all of our citizens. So the bottom line is this. Code enforcement has this role to play, and the key thing that I take in part of this message is elevate code enforcement departments. Get these code enforcement officers that are so dedicated to the community on board with economic development and with the highest levels of leadership, city council, county commissions, mayors. You need to be looking at code enforcement officers as your true ambassadors in the community, and empower code enforcement officers to come to you and say, these are the areas where we need help. And Mrs. Smith has this vacant property, a blighted building next to her, and we need to do something about it. And when you go in there at that community level and you're serving her and you're serving that neighborhood, you're going to get support out of the community. The key thing I want to target here and really make sure this is made very clear is when we're talking about targeting vacant, abandoned, blighted properties, what we are talking about primarily are absent corporations. What I call the next one is what I call the dead guy problem, and that is a property was owned, the person died years, in many cases decades ago, and we at the community level have to wake up that property, find the heirs of the dead guy, the dead person, and make them aware that they have a potential interest in the property and help them to move it forward so we can get clear title. The other one is disappeared investors. You know, Florida has been boom or bust cycles for decades. And here we are again. Investors flock in, they buy lots, they realize they can't build for a variety of reasons, they just walk away. Our effort here involves bringing these dead investors back to life and tracking them down, and then ultimately getting these properties back online. At the end of the day, what this is all about is title, title, title. A great source of blight across the community, across the state, is the fact that we can't have clear title. And in this concept here, bad title is the primary driver of blight across the state. And here's what it looks like. Any community that suffers from blight or failure to thrive, at its core, you're going to find title as the problem. And this is just one example of that. You see that in this case, I think the person died years ago. There are mortgages piled up on there. There were, you know, a deed that was errant and was a problem. And then you just get liens up one after the other. And what happens is, even if an investor wanted to buy this property, because of all these problems that you see here with the title, they can't do it. And so that property will sit there vacant forever. This is another issue that see absent corporations. After the last recession, these corporations rushed in and they bought properties, tax deed and otherwise. And you see here in Putnam County, large numbers of parcels, 1,528 parcels concentrated all throughout that community by absentee corporations that aren't going to do at that point in time what was necessary to help economic development and get houses and get neighborhoods moving again. You just look at that concentration in there of these vacant lots all over the place. This is the opportunity for economic development. It's not just in rural areas. Look at Sarasota County here, Northport. Again, vacant lots over and over again that have been abandoned, not taken care of. Our local leaders have an opportunity and frankly an obligation to go in there and bring these back online. This is Hillsborough County. This identifies what I call the dead guy problem. These are estate properties. Over and over again, what happens is when someone dies, rather than the estate being opened up and title properly transferred, it's just reflected as the estate of, and that causes title problems that is a failure to thrive. An estate is never a proper party, and this problem of someone dying and then an estate not being opened up is what prevents title from being clear so that a new party can go in there and build a house on it or do something else with that vacant lot. At the end of the day, this is another concept. All across the state, we have vacant buildings that are a violation of the building code. They're danger to the neighbors. They're danger to the community. And what we have an obligation to do at the local government level is to get in there and cure that that dangerous condition. And primarily that means by bulldozing, taking the building down once it meets certain conditions. But the thing is, we should never fire up the bulldozer, and we should never be taking that building down unless we have before started a strategy to go and collect back the money that taxpayers have spent to do this. And this is just a very basic concept, but it's one that's missed all across the state. We as taxpayers should not be paying for bulldozing buildings and taking care of properties for people that aren't taking care of them. But what happens is code enforcement goes out and mows grass and removes mattresses, junk, and debris over and over again. Then we record a lien, and nobody does anything about it. We go out and we bulldoze a property, and we record a lien for 10 grand or 20 grand, and then there's never any action to formally and forcefully go after and collect that money. That's the fundamental concept here. The moment there's a lien recorded by code enforcement for demolishing or vacant abandoned structure or grass, we should be going back and collecting that. Important thing to understand, municipality is the only one that can do anything about this. For so many of these properties, they're vacant, abandoned for a reason. The owners don't care to take any interest in them anymore. So what we should be doing with these efforts is to go in and foreclose on these liens as a mechanism to provide economic development, to get these properties back online so that we can create economic activity, primarily building houses. That's usually the best avenue. But look, it might be community gardens, community parks, churches that may take interest in them. But the bottom line is we want to provide positive economic activity, invigorating neighborhoods, eliminating blight, encouraging home ownership. And the statutory authority for this is Chapter 162 that allows every community to go in and do these positive things by foreclosing on the liens. I get into some of these fundamental concepts here, but the process here is simple, and here's the bottom line. All that the community has to do is to identify 10 or more vacant properties within their community where the owners have walked away, and we spent taxpayer dollars to take care of them, whether it's mowing the grass or removing debris or demolishing structures. Then we talk to the surrounding community leaders, get their involvement. We coordinate with allies. Again, this gets the neighborhood involved and positive in supporting these things. And then we take action on those cases. All that's required. Staff at code enforcement level, it's a simple question. Where is your universe of liens? How much are they? We got $100,000 worth of liens out there uncollected. We got $1 million worth of liens out there uncollected. For some folks, it's a lot bigger than that. There's tens of millions of dollars out there in some larger municipalities. After we scan that universe of liens, then we develop the strategy to go after them. We clearly identify that these are vacant, abandoned structures, and then we go through the process to clear the title and to bring them to auction. It's a very short process from the time a lien is filed, the foreclosure is filed, till the time that there's a property auction. It can be a matter of months. And so think about that. You've got a property that's been vacant and abandoned for years. And in a short period of time after identifying that property, you can be bringing it up to auction, generating revenue for the city and causing positive economic growth within the community. So that's just the brief story here. I've got a whole series of concepts and videos here on the subject and the website. And again, I'll drop that in there so that the link is clear. And I'll end it right now by just encouraging people to follow up. If you've got a question, drop me an email here. I'd be happy to set up a Zoom conference call immediately and show you how this can be put to work on an immediate basis within your community.